राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो, पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। शहीद तेरी मौत ही, शहीद तेरी मौत ही तेरे वतन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो, पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। शहीद तेरी मौत ही, शहीद तेरी मौत ही तेरे वतन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी। खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहां शहीद हो, खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। गुलाम उठ वतन के दुश्मनों से इंतकाम ले, इन अपने दोनों बाजुओं से खंजरों का काम ले। चमन के वास्ते चमन के बाहुबा शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पहाड़ तक भी कांपने लगे तेरे जुनून से, तू आसमां पे इनकलाब लिख दे अपने खून से, खून से। जमीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो, जमीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो, पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में नौजवान शहीद हो। शहीद तेरी मौत ही, शहीद तेरी मौत ही तेरे वतन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी। खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहाँ शहीद हो, खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहाँ शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। गुलाम उठ वतन के दुश्मनों से इंतकाम ले, इन अपने दोनों बाजुओं से खंजरों का काम ले। चमन के वास्ते चमन के बाहुबा शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पहाड़ तक भी कांपने लगे तेरे जुनून से, तू आसमां पे इनकलाब लिख दे अपने खून से, खून से। ज़मीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो, ज़मीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। वास्ते चमन के बाहुबा शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पहाड़ तक भी कांपने लगे तेरे जुनून से, तू आसमां पे इनकलाब लिख दे अपने खून से, खून से। ज़मीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो, ज़मीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो, पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। शहीद तेरी मौत ही, शहीद तेरी मौत ही तेरे वतन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी, तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी। खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहां शहीद हो, खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। गुलाम उठ वतन के दुश्मनों से इंतकाम ले, इन अपने दोनों बाजुओं से खंजरों का काम ले। चमन के वास्ते चमन के बाहों शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो। पहाड़ तक भी कांपने लगे तेरे जुनून से, तू आसमां पे इनकलाब लिख दे अपने खून से, जमीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो, जमीन नहीं तेरा वतन है आसमां शहीद हो। वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो।
जैसे टीवी कनेक्टेड, जैसे FF सिक्योर, जैसे रिवर सेकंड फ्लोर, there's no 5G.
जैसे 5G.
No, no.
वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो, वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान।
It's going waste.
काफी नाना को गरम को हटा दो, ये नाना को दे दो गरम को। नहीं खाना गरम मोमो
जलाया है, अब जाके कहीं हम सर पे केसरी रंग सजाया है। है मेरी ज़मीं अफसोस नहीं जो तेरे लिए 100 दर्द सहे, महफूज रहे तेरी आन सदा चाहे जान मेरी ये रहे ना रहे। मेरी ज़मीं महबूब मेरी, मेरी नस नस में तेरा इश्क बहे, फीका ना पड़े कभी रंग तेरा जिस्मों से निकल के खून कहे।
You only know what to die on.
तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जावा गुल बन के मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। सरसों से भरे खलियान मेरे, जहाँ झूम के भंगड़ा पा न सका। आबाद रहे वो गांव मेरा, जहाँ लौट के वापस जा न सका। ओ वतना में मेरे वतना में तेरा मेरा प्यार निराला था। कुर्बान हुआ तेरी असमत पे मैं, कितना नसीबों वाला था।
General Lakhwinder first saw action in 1971 conflict.
तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जावा गुल बन के, मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा, तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू।
One by three Gurkha rifles.
केसरी
Three successive attacks. Quite well. An act of outstanding valor that did not
तू हंसती रहे, तेरी आंख घड़ी भर नम ना हो। मैं मरता था जिस मुखड़े पे, कभी उसका उजाला कम ना हो।
General Lakhwinder military genius.
ओ माई मेरी क्या फिक्र तुझे, क्यों आंख से दरिया बहता है। तू कहती थी तेरा चांद हूँ मैं, और चांद हमेशा रहता है। मेरी ज़मीं अफसोस नहीं, जो तेरे लिए सौ दर्द सहे। महफूज रहे तेरी आन सदा, चाहे जान मेरी ये रहे ना रहे।
What can be more satisfying for a soldier?
मेरी ज़मीं महबूब मेरी, मेरी नस नस में तेरा इश्क बहे। फीका ना पड़े कभी रंग तेरा, से निकल के खून कहे।
After retirement, General Lakhwinder
तेरी
spent
मिट्टी में मिल जावा गुल बन के, मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा, तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। सरसों से भरे खलियान मेरे, जहाँ झूम के भंगड़ा पा न सका। आबाद रहे वो गांव मेरा, जहाँ लौट के वापस जा न सका। ओ वतना में मेरे वतना में तेरा मेरा प्यार निराला था। कुर्बान हुआ तेरी असमत पे मैं, कितना नसीबों वाला था। ये केसरी रंग सजाया है, ऐ मेरी ज़मीं अफसोस नहीं, जो तेरे लिए सौ दर्द सहे। महफूज रहे तेरी आन सदा, चाहे जान मेरी ये रहे ना रहे। मेरी ज़मीं महबूब मेरी, मेरी नस नस में तेरा इश्क बहे। फीका ना पड़े कभी रंग तेरा, जिस्मों से निकल के खून कहे। तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जावा गुल गुल बन के मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा, तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। सरसों से भरे खलियान मेरे, जहाँ झूम के भंगड़ा पा न सका। आबाद रहे वो गांव मेरा, जहाँ लौट के वापस जा न सका। ओ वतना वे मेरे वतना वे, तेरा मेरा प्यार निराला था। कुर्बान हुआ तेरी असमत पे, मैं कितना नसीबों वाला था। तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जावा, गुल बन के मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा, तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। केसरी ओ हीर मेरी तू हंसती रहे, तेरी आंख घड़ी भर नम ना हो। मैं मरता था जिस मुखड़े पे, कभी उसका उजाला कम ना हो। ओ माई मेरी क्या फिक्र तुझे, क्यों आंख से दरिया बहता है। तू कहती थी तेरा चांद हूँ मैं, और चांद हमेशा रहता है। तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जा, जिस मुंह से निकल के खून कहे। तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जावा, गुल बन के मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा, तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। सरसों से भरे खलियान मेरे, जहाँ झूम के भंगड़ा पा न सका। आबाद रहे वो गांव मेरा, जहाँ लौट के वापस जा न सका। ओ वतना वे मेरे वतना वे, तेरा मेरा प्यार निराला था। कुर्बान हुआ तेरी असमत पे, मैं कितना नसीबों वाला था। तेरी मिट्टी में मिल जावा, गुल बन के मैं खिल जावा, इतनी सी है दिल की आरज़ू। तेरी नदियों में बह जावा, तेरे खेतों में लहरावा, इतनी सी।
You'll have to unmute yourself.
Amrita is still your आंखें दे इसकी
Hello, everybody who has joined in. This is Anand. Yes, what? Pretty good.
Hello, can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, if anybody specifically is unmuted, may you please, I request all of you to mute yourself so that, we are able to hear the speakers who are speaking. So, welcome dear members. ये नया नॉर्मल है और अब इस नॉर्मल के साथ हम लोग अपने फंक्शंस करेंगे और before we proceed with the Kargil Vijay Diwas, I want to inform all of you that 14th August, same time, Saturday, it is Saturday, is our next event. It's a book discussion by Dr. Sanjay Baru about his new book, India's Power Elite. So now, without much delay, I will request our Honorable President, Mr. Surya Sethi, to give his welcome note, and let's start the program.
Thank you, Rachna. Let me begin by saying Jai Hind to everyone who has taken time out today to join us. As an army brat who spent his formative years in cantonments around the country, I am deeply honored to welcome our keynote speaker, Major General Lakhwinder Singh, YSM, and to welcome each one of you to this solemn occasion. Operation Vijay is recognized world over as one of the most glorious victories among armed conflicts worldwide. The prowess of India's professional armed forces was on full display at the world's highest battlefield. India's brave hearts showed their mettle and did the nation proud. The 85-day conflict that started on May 3rd, 1999 and ended in victory for India on July 26, 1999 is the sole instance to date of direct conventional warfare between two nuclear states. The then Brigadier Lakhwinder Singh played a key role in crafting this Vijay for our motherland. He led from the front, and though he became known as the enraged bull of Dras, the real marvel was his sharp military acumen that crafted the most innovative use of the available artillery by the gunners he commanded. The story of the valor of those who fought at Kargil is etched forever in 4 Paramveer Chakras, 11 Mahavir Chakras, 6 Kirti Chakras, 9 Veer Chakras, 25 Shaurya Chakras, and other decorations that were awarded. Unfortunately, such glorious chapters in history are never without cost. 527 brave children of Bharat Ma paid with their lives, while 1363 were wounded and one became a POW. The nation made a promise to never forget the martyrs of Kargil and commemorates Kargil Diwas annually. The founding members of the Gracious Living Foundation worked tirelessly and in 2012 got permission for a public function in Defense Colony to pay homage to the Kargil brave hearts. We have endeavored to do this annually since then. The Gracious Living Foundation also put its weight behind the young and dynamic municipal councillor, Shri Abhishek Dutt, who was the moving force behind the Wall of Honor and the rechristening of the main Arjun Marg roundabout as Veer Bhumi Chowk. We see all this as a small and humble homage to the soldiers who delivered the Kargil Vijay Diwas to the nation. Once again, I welcome our keynote speaker, Major General Lakhwinder Singh ji, and all of you who have joined us for the virtual commemoration via Zoom. And before our MC takes over, may I request everyone to stand up wherever they are and observe a minute's silence in the memory of Kargil martyrs. I will ring a bell to commence the start of the minute, and I will ring a bell again when the minute ends. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I request Rajesh Shetty ji to please say a few words.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and privilege, and I believe it's a privilege to be able to introduce a legend in his own lifetime. A hero, a legendary hero, whose name has now become synonymous with the Kargil victory. A man who rewrote artillery doctrine, tactics, and utilization. So much so that his tactics, deployment methodologies are now being studied in artillery schools and military colleges around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce a decorated army officer, General Lakhwinder Singh, also known as the Enraged Bull of Dras, as our president very kindly called. He's a third generation army officer who joined the 30th NDA course at the tender age of 15. He was commissioned in the Regiment of Artillery in 1967 and first saw action during the 1970 war when he was posted as a forward observation officer with the 86th Infantry Brigade in the Dera Baba Nanak sector. He was attached to the 1x3 Gorkha Rifles, and he led 3 successive company attacks in spite of being wounded in a mine blast, an act of extreme valor that did not go unrecognized. Subsequently, in his 40 years of service, General Lakhwinder has seen action on several fronts. His military genius and can-do attitude actually came to the fore during the Kargil conflict when he was Commander RT, or CRT as it's known in artillery parlance, and with the 8th Mountain Division, who were hurriedly inducted from Srinagar when they discovered that the Pakistanis had actually moved into Kargil. He took quick stock of the situation deployed his guns and used them so effectively that it changed the course of battle in India's favor decisively. And what can be more satisfying for a soldier than to have the enemy himself acknowledge it? In fact, the Chief of Pakistan Army told our High Commissioner, Mr. Parthasarathy, that it was the effective use of our artillery that forced Pakistan to vacate the Kargil heights. After retirement, General Lakhwinder spends his time running a very successful service company. And more importantly, he spends a lot of time on the golf course. I believe he's a very, very good golfer. And Lakhwinder sir, if you're listening to me, I just hope you'll be very kind as to give me enough strokes if I ever get the privilege of playing with you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, presenting General Lakhwinder.
I am unable to see him anywhere in this screen.
Rachna, you will have to call him because I think he's having some network problem.
Okay.
He's not in the group, so kindly call him to join.
Okay. But Gobind is his son's name, so probably
maybe he has joined with his sons. He's having a little problem.
Oh, did he say that? I'll just give him a call.
No, it shows on the top.
Acha. So in the sir is here. He is with okay. Okay, General Sir, welcome back. I think you got disconnected and we were all looking out for you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm sorry about it because some error occurred and the whole thing went for 6.
Yeah. I could see that you are trying to enter from the other ID.
So I'm sorry that you had to wait for this long, but I missed the initial proceedings.
So,
where is that?
Sir, the important part of the proceedings that you missed was my request for strokes because I believe you are a very mean and effective golfer.
I'd love to play with you and prove it otherwise.
Of course, sir, that what I was saying was that it is your effective use of the artillery, innovative, so much so that even my costmates from the gunneries, artillery costmates speak very, very highly of you, and that is probably the biggest endorsement somebody can get, where your juniors speak highly of you, and they speak really, really highly of you. So, without further ado, sir, we'll now wait for you to come on. Thank you.
So, may I start?
Yes, General Sir, please.
All right. So,
I
feel very privileged to be called upon to deliver a keynote address to this august audience. I would like to start my address by paying homage to our brave hearts, both martyrs and living, who fought fearlessly beyond the call of duty for the honor, safety, and security of our nation. Kargil war is more than 2 decades old. By now, the story of infusion and the aftermath is well known and needs little elucidation. I was fortunately part of the war and carry my own impressions, which necessarily may not be the party line narration. Kargil was a blunder, a result of mindset, failed intelligence, and indifferent surveillance. The timing of infusion was critical. It came as a big surprise when it was least expected. The two prime ministers in 1999, Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Sharif, were visibly moving towards peace through bus diplomacy, and one or both did not know what is brewing up in the military minds of Pakistan. Behind this, under cover of this diplomatic effort, General Musharraf was plotting not only to destabilize the peace process, but also seek revenge of the humiliations for loss of Siachen in 1973 and the failing attempts to revive insurgency in Kashmir. The military aim was to cut off the strategic road link between Srinagar and Leh and isolate glacier. Operation Kargil was a revival of plans conceived during General Zia's time in 1982, which generally conformed to Operation Topak. It is learned that the Kargil proposal was discussed during the time of Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. She dismissed it as too volatile and dangerous, with potential to trigger off a full-fledged war. Interestingly, the officer class of Pakistan had an unwritten divide between those commissioned prior to 1971.
You were part of it?
Am I dressed?
So what? There's nobody who's dressed.
I'm not going for it. No, it's not.
Can you resume? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please continue. And the person who has just joined, please mute yourself. We can hear everything.
So I will start with, interestingly, the officer class of Pakistan had an unwritten divide between those commissioned prior to 1971 and commissioned post 1971. Pre-97 commissioned officers, including General Musharraf, had a burning hatred towards the Hindu India and were all set to revive and execute the blueprint of Topak. The others were not propagators of this idea and possibly would have resisted such a misadventure. I draw this impression from books and articles written by the authors and essayists across the border. The plan, named Paima, means Coral Mountain, was hatched and executed by the clique of four. The clique was chosen well in advance by General Pervez Musharraf and officers placed in important posts: Chief of General Staff, GOC 10 Corps, and the Force Commander in another area. The planning and execution was in their exclusive domain. The plans were not shared with any other general, either the Pakistan Navy, nor the Pakistan Air Force, and purportedly not even with the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Their core plan hinged on complete secrecy and deception. The plan was to infiltrate the local NLA troops, the Northern Light Infantry troops, across the LOC in the garb of Mujahideens and occupy the winter vacated post before the onset of autumn, presenting fait accompli to the Indians. The Pakistan plan was audacious and executed very well by the local commanders. They were able to surprise India through series of well thought of measures put through routinely without arousing Indian suspicion. Kargil Diwas was chosen as the main impact point because it was closest to the LOC and satisfied their aim of cutting off the Srinagar-Leh highway in shortest time frame. It also provided access to Rojila Pass for any subsequent developments if they so wanted. The plan relied on timings and mindset and some events that was going on at that point of time. The first was the bus diplomacy had diverted the attention of both nations from the operations to much expectations of stability. The Indian Army mindset that no offensive could be undertaken in Mashko Daras Kargil due to lack of logistic infrastructure across the LOC. The untenable posts in height of winters were vacated as a matter of routine by both sides and reoccupied only on the onset of autumn. Only on the onset of autumn, Pak broke the norm and exploited the vacuum thus created. No outside force were inducted in FCNA, thus giving no indication of any unusual activity. The existing strength of NLA battalions was beefed up in the garb of normal turnover of forces. The logistics too were built up as a routine measure, relying mostly on the stocks available in situ with the NLA battalions. The forward logistic build-up ahead of the LOC was undertaken by fighting porters, pack animals, and helicopters flying low in the shadow of mountains over a period of time. The Pakistan Army initiated a special radio network in Pashto tribal language, giving the impression that Mujahideen were operating net for any further disturbance they wanted in the country. The network was intercepted as was designedly to mislead the Indian Army. They succeeded. The NI troops were to operate in Mujahideen apparel to convey an impression that it was a jihadi movement. It is important to understand the psyche of Pakistani to preempt their design. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, the ex-High Commissioner to Pakistan, has laid it out very well in his book, Where the Borders Bleed, a must-to-read for Pakistan watchers. How was Topama executed? The execution had started on the eve of onset of winters of 1998. It is said that Pak senior officers had recce'd across the LOC, found many vacated posts, and earmarked them for occupation. Excerpts recorded in the diary of Captain Hussain Ahmad, frontier force, captured in Mashko Valley, indicate that they had set up a camp in Mashko in the winter of February 1999, recce'd the areas, and lived through the winters. If this version record is correct, then it should raise the hackles on the possibility of such repetition along our borders in similar terrain with Pakistan and China by well-trained, motivated and equipped troops. This calls for caution and countermeasure for any future disappointment. The intelligence fiasco. Without dwelling much on this, it would be correct to conclude that there was a total failure of strategic and tactical intelligence gathering. The RAW, the IB, and the state forces had no clue of what was happening, what was being planned. The MI, the military intelligence, too was caught napping. This is a subject of separate study, so I will leave it at that. What is a matter of concern that no one has been held responsible and accountable, which does not augur well for the future. Recently, we were once again surprised, this time by the Chinese intrusion in the eastern Ladakh. It is a firm belief that within the services, some of the best officers, cadre should be positioned in the inter-branches of respective services. A timely intelligence is a key to any preemptive action. Purely from a military point of view, it was perfectly planned and brilliantly executed initiative. It shocked India beyond belief. While planning, Musharraf erred in two accounts. He underestimated the grit and power of Indian armed forces and the Indian populace. The Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, though disappointed, had the political courage and gumption to make the intrusion public, which spurred the population to come together to combat the adversity. Musharraf seems to have ignored the other factor too, that both India and Pakistan were nuclear power states. The international community was quick to note this and set process in motion to intervene for a quick resolution to defuse the situation. The area of intrusion was under the operational command of 121 Infantry Brigade of 3 Infantry Division. 121 Infantry Brigade was stretched over a period of over a frontage of 168 kilometers of LOC with 80-kilometer unmanned gap. On 3rd May, Bakarwals saw some black dress atop Batalik Heights. Reaction to this, on 5th May, patrols were sent out in response to a sighting. By first week of May, multiple infiltrations were reported in Diwas, Aksar, Mashko. Enemy ingress in Diwas sector was noticed for the first time on 12th May when own patrol saw 4 persons in black dress at point .5140. In the final count, the Pakistan had infiltrated and occupied close to 130 posts over 150 kilometers frontage. What was our reaction? Headquarters 15 Corps all along believed that the intruders were Mujahideens. The idea cleverly reinforced by the rules of Pakistan network. The holding formation, 3 Infantry Division, was far too stretched to find resources to evict the intruders. By second week of May, the Corps decided to induct additional troops to stabilize the situation. 56th Mountain Brigade was moved from Valley to Daras with 2 infantry battalions, 1 Naga and 18 Grenadiers. Shy of 1 battalion, 8 Sikh was placed under command 56th Infantry Brigade in situ. It had the support of 6 RT5 units. 56th Mountain Brigade took over the operational responsibility of Daras sector from 121 Infantry Brigade on May 22nd. Most of the learned audience here is familiar with the terrain existing in Ladakh. Ladakh is known as cold desert. The town of Daras is typically referred to as the second coldest inhabited place in the world. Winter temperatures dip to minus 60 degrees Celsius here. Sitting atop 11,000 to 18,000 feet, enemy had an overriding advantage over us. For military, it made for one of the toughest and highest battlefields in the world. Troops moving from lower heights above 9,000 feet required acclimatization to rarefied air of high altitude area before undertaking any strenuous activity. 56th Brigade, within 4 days of moving from an altitude of 6,000 feet to Daras, embarked upon a plan to recapture 2 heights, Daras, Toroling and Tiger Hill. Toroling at 4 kilometers was the closest intrusion to National Highway. .5140 overlooked Toroling. The Tiger Hill, the other feature, with its majestic heights, dominated Daras and large stretch of National Highway. On 22nd May 1999, 18 Grenadiers were tasked to capture .4590 Toroling Heights, 1 Naga .5140 and 8 Sikh the Tiger Hill, supported by just 6 fire units. These attacks were dismal failure. Both 8 Sikh and 1 Naga got daylighted and fell back to their bases. 18 Grenadiers was a little more gumptious, stayed put around .4590. In the postscript, reasons of failure were not difficult to analyze. Hurriedly assembled troops, ill-equipped and not acclimatized to high altitude conditions, were launched to capture ill-defined objectives without any confirmation of the enemy's strength and disposition. The firepower was inadequate. By now it was clear that infiltrators were not Mujahideens but regular troops. The situation looked grim. Fresh troops were required to come in to stem the rot. On 1st June, the balance of 8 Mountain Division from the valley was inducted to Daras sector to take over the operational responsibility of the western stretch of the holding division comprising Bimbat, Daras, Tiger Hill and Mashko. The div had 2 infantry brigades, 56 at Daras and 79 at Mashko, and 19.5 artillery batteries. Of these, 6 were buffer batteries. The division realized it had great operational and moral responsibility to lift the sagging morale of the Indian Army and cheer national mood. Army at this time looked forward to one single victory to wrest the initiative from the intruders. The choice of initial objective was critical. After much deliberation, we homed on to the nearest heights of National Highway, Toroling Heights and extension .5140. Success here would open the most dominated stretch of the road and secure much of Daras township. The shortcomings of initial debacle were taken care of. Fresh, fully equipped troops, acclimatized and familiarized, were earmarked. Additional artillery was available for suppressive fire. One critical issue remained unsolved: how to enable the infantry to traverse the steep bare slopes to reach the top under intense enemy fire. Without reaching the top, there was no hope in hell to wake the intruders. We pondered over the issue and thought of an idea to overcome this problem. We experimented. To reach the infantry close to top, it was absolutely imperative to keep the enemy's head down through firepower. Reflecting back in history, we recall the use of cannons in the days of Ranjit Singh and Babur. The cannons those days were lined up to fire pinpoint barrages in front of the advancing enemy to break the assault. Taking a cue from this, we set forth to experiment the Torling. 2 Boffer guns and 2 field guns were moved to Torling and deployed 4 kilometers south of Torling at Wimbert. Commander 56th Infantry Brigade joined us for this adventure. Once the guns were deployed, 18 grenadiers sitting around Torling was requested to relocate troops to the flanks to avoid collateral damage. The guns had been prepared for direct shooting, the best detachment chosen and rehearsed before embarking on this venture. With prayers on our lips, we opened up with Boffer gun and were relieved to see the fall of shot near the target. Once the ranging process was complete, all subsequent rounds hit the dreaded Barbad bunker. Now, Barbad bunker was atop the Tiger Torling. It had caused heavy casualties to our troops and had held the 18 grenadiers at bay. All the rounds clearly hit the target. This was encouraging. Before we could complete the experiment and shift our focus to a field gun, we came under heavy shelling from enemy artillery. This did not deter us to complete our experiment. About 155mm Boffer guns. One 55 Boffer fires a 40 kilo shell at a speed of 2,700 feet per second. The engagement of target where the gun layer can see the target and lay sight on it is called direct firing. Many technical parameters and factors impact the accuracy and consistency of direct firing. The human factor the most. The main player in this dispensation is the layer, whose every slight turn of elevation and traversing wheel can make a telling difference on the target. Like Avtar Singh of 108 Medium Regiment, the layer on the Boffer gun was an exceptional gunner with hands as steady as a surgeon. He could possibly put round after round exactly at the intended place. By the time we fired a few rounds, our troops around the target could hear the enemy in complete disarray. The radio intercept proved how devastating was the impact on enemy. हमारे पर कहर बरस रहा है, हमें बचाओ. Hell has fallen loose on us, please save us. The experiment of direct firing gave better than expected results. A suggestion was made to Colonel Thakur, sitting atop or close to .4590, to take advantage of favorable situation and go for the feature. The enemy sitting at Torling was in a state of disarray. Here was an opportunity for a bold decision. He thought it otherwise. In retrospect, 18 grenadiers missed a great opportunity to ascribe the first victory in Kargil to their name. Once back in the headquarters, I was able to resolve the loose ends to strategize on the best way to use firepower. We worked out a firepower concept using 100 guns in normal firing mode, supplemented by Bofors in DF role. The idea was to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. The integrated concept was able to deliver an impact equivalent of a mini nuke on the objective to pulverize the enemy and put fear of God in the camp. The modalities of the concept enabled the guns to engage the objective for as long as infantry wanted, sometimes as close as 50 meters to the enemy. The concept created a perfect synergy between infantry and artillery. The faith of assaulting troops in the guns was so intense that the infantry had started using Bofors as a second weapon. The plan of Toroling and .5140. I will briefly touch on this. 56th Mountain Brigade was tasked to capture area Toroling and .5140 complex on 12 June. The plan was to launch 2 battalions in Singh, 2 Rajrif under Colonel Ravindranath was to capture .4590 and Toroling complex, and 18 Diwas rifles under Colonel B. Chakrabarti to capture .5140. The artillery plan, the concept of artillery deployment for the ensuing battle was clear in my mind. To use a sledgehammer to smash a nut. All nuts and bolts were put in place, but there was a tricky situation to handle. For artillery engagement, the targets are required to be registered by actual firing, which is imperative that a safety distance of at least 400 meters from the target is available. How was artillery to register first division objective? Toroling and .4590, the 18 grenadiers were sitting 50 to 100 meters from the top. It was a dilemma. The grenadiers needed to pull back to safer distance for ranging and resistance process. Pulling back grenadiers involved possible loss of foothold and definite loss of height. The idea was not appealing to infantry. A tough call to make. It took me some time to convince the infantry commander that it was essential and productive to endorse the plan. The direct firing experiment and its results impacted the decision. They finally agreed to and I think the commander's presence during this experiment helped. They finally agreed, but with a rider that I was to ensure that the intruders did not occupy the vacated position. The challenge was accepted. Our anchor team, headed by Colonel Dev, was able to register the target and effect the plan on time. The effect of salvos hitting Toroling height was one of awe and shock. The deputy commander of Infantry Brigade, Colonel David, standing there, his jaws dropped on seeing the accuracy of first salvo. Once he regained his composure, his first words were, "I've never seen such perfect firing before, not even in the school of artillery." It is said that Toroling was shot up by a few inches due to impact of artillery fire. 2 Rajrif, under the commanding officer, commenced the attack on given time and reached Toroling heights without much interference from the enemy. By the morning of 13 June, they had captured the objective and warded off enemy counterattacks. 2 notable events of this attack merit a mention here. When leading the company on southeast spur to .4590, Colonel Ravindranath took a quick decision to launch a reserve company when the forward company attack was held up to tackle the objective from the flank, which yielded positive results. All along this, the DF guns kept engaging a target, which maintained the momentum of attack. The attack on Toroling along the southwest spur also came under some difficulty. The company commander, Major Vivek Gupta, moved to intervene and became a fatal casualty. Major Vivek, Captain M.K. Singh, the forward observation officer or the RT spotter, with the Charlie Company, was quick to react. He took hold of the troops to lead them to objective and rally them to ward off counter-attack. He showed great presence of mind and a professional acumen. By the morning of 13 June, Tolling was back with us. The risk of pulling back 18 grenadiers from the proximity of enemy defences for registration was a serious cause of concern in my mind. Post this success, it should vindicate it. The tide had turned in our favour. The nation and the armed forces rejoiced the first victory of Kargil operation. From here on, the division ran through objective from east to west, Tololing, 0.5140, Black Rock area, Tiger Hill, and 0.4875, also called the Gun Hill. The application of the evolved and tried out firepower concept became a norm to reach the troops close to enemy without hindrance. In operational sense, it translated into assault by fire and mopping up infantry. The concept not only predestined the success but also ensured minimal infantry casualties. Battle of Tiger Hill. The Tiger Hill is located 10 kilometers off the National Highway, stands 16,700 feet high. It looks majestic and stands tall above all the surrounding heights. It became a symbol of strength and prestige both for India and Pakistan. For Pakistan to hold it and for India to capture it. The task of capturing Tiger Hill was assigned to 92 Infantry Brigade, commanded by Brigadier Bajwa. The brigade had 2 units on its orbit, 8 Sikh and 18 Grenadiers. 8 Sikh was to provide firm base and 18 Grenadiers was to launch the attack. The attack was scheduled on 3rd July. Earlier in the day, the Indian Air Force came to action and dropped 2 laser-guided bombs at Tiger Hill. One of them hit the target, the other missed the crest. At the scheduled time, the artillery opened up with 100 guns, with 6 guns in direct firing role. The impact of fire was tremendous and reverberated on the hills around it. 18 Grenadiers started the assault and began the arduous climb along the sea spurs. The battle for Tiger Hill was expected to be fierce, but turned out differently. By the morning of 4th July, the Tiger Hill had been scaled. Some outstanding features of this battle need a mention here. 1. The plan of 18 Grenadiers to send a commando platoon under Captain Balwan from the most difficult approach to surprise the enemy at Pinnacle, the highest point of Tiger Hill, was a good move and resulted in surprising the enemy. Second, the enemy was holding area collar short of top, possibly as a screen position, and was expected to give a tough fight. The firepower unleashed by artillery forced them to withdraw from here, which gave a clean walkthrough to 18 Grenadiers on top. Around midnight, the weather had become cloudy and rainy. The battalion commander reported that the leading companies were in a state of disorientation and could not find the direction to the top. In the ops room, GOC asked me to do something. It was critical for them to find the direction right. The gun is a limited option. One was to fire a salvo. The second was to fire a star shell to eliminate the area. Both were ruled out to avoid fratricide and jeopardize the attack. The other only available option to us was a direct firing gun on Tiger Hill. The night had clouded and clouds had obscured the target. You could not see the target. We took recourse to a new technique of DIDF to fire at the invisible target. Now, DIDF is a direct indirect firing in which if you have fired at objective, you record the data and at night you put the data on the gun and fire, hoping that the round will land at the same place. The best detachment was chosen the best they have put on a seat, and was asked to fire a single round. To our delight, it hit bang on the target, and thereafter many rounds were fired till infantry itself and requested us to stop. Fourth, Pakistan is known for counterattack on the lost positions. Brigadier Bajwa, Commander 192, had foreseen such situation and had earmarked company of 86 from the direction of Pariyon ka Talab, diagonally opposite to the axis of attack of 18 grenadiers, to throw a screen between the leading elements of 18 grenadiers and the enemy. It worked very well. 5. In true traditional armed forces, an act of bravery and courage of Pakistan company commanders deserves a mention here. Outnumbered and heavily shelled, Captain Karnal Sher Khan of 27 Battalion, the Sindh Regiment, showed outstanding resilience and courage by launching numerous counterattacks on our positions till he fell to our bullets. His citation for bravery was sent to Pakistan Army by the Indian Army, and he was awarded Nishan-e-Haider posthumous, the highest gallantry award of Pakistan. Tiger will become a history. Between two warring nations, 3 highest gallantry awards were given. 2 PVCs by the Indian government and 1 Nishan-e-Haider by Pakistan. And the last but most crucial for gunners. The compliment came from GOC on the morning of 4th July once the Tiger Hill was taken. Lakhwinder, you have done it again. The infantry walked slung arm to Tiger Hill. Owing to time limitation, not possible for me to cover all facets of firepower. The infantry was apprehensive for assaulting at night, resorting to daylight attack at some situations. The daring attack was carried with 13 jackrafe on rocky area at the base of point 5140, an unthinkable issue at that point of time. In another incident, 2 Rajrif, while attacking Black Rock area, was held up by MMG position. They could find no solution. They asked us to find buffers. Once again, it was dark, we could not find. Once again, the DIDR procedure was adopted and the guns fired, and the round fell next to the MMG post. 2 corrections were given and the post was destroyed. The concept proved to be very versatile. I want to talk about this 100 guns concept. It is not the integrated concept for not simple maths. It is believed in some quarters that 100 guns were lined up along the road and fired. It was not so. For each of the battles, guns were deployed and redeployed to keep them square to the objective. Speculative fire was kept to a minimum. It did not necessarily entail that on every objective we used 100 guns. In fact, on the divisional first objective totaling, we fired 54 guns, half of 100 guns. The second misnomer is that guns fired incessantly till barrels were hot, red hot. We never reached the situation. The terminal effect of objective was core part of the concept. This helped conserve ammunition. The artillery ammunition fired by 8 Div was 1 lakh round. The artillery ammunition fired by the neighboring division 3 Div was 1.8 lakh rounds. The concept did accrue many advantages to us. It degraded the enemy, reached infantry within the eyeball contact with enemy, enabled them for daring daily attacks, navigated them when required, empowered them to use buffers as second weapon when in that situation, kept the guns silent, limited own casualties and enhanced enemy's casualties. And most important, imbued the assaulting troops with the confidence of assured success. Lieutenant General Christian Paul, the Corps Commander, termed the new concept as one of the most innovative tactics to win a war. Daring, bold, and dynamic handling, an unconventional way of employment of artillery resulted in positive execution. Artillery created such fire supremacy on the battlefield that enemy was physically degraded to such an extent that subsequent ground operations were predestined to succeed. I will not touch upon Air Force. The Indian Air Force was a hesitant participant. The Air Chief had his own reason: the viability of employing air in the mountainous altitude terrain, and apprehension that Air Force could escalate to full-fledged war. The CCS took some convincing to approve the use of Air Force, with a stipulation of not crossing the LOC/IB at any cost. The Indian Air Force launched Operation Safed Sagar on 26 May to engage targets at elevation of 11,000 feet to 17,000 feet. In the first 2 days itself, Air Force lost 3 planes, 2 to Stinger missiles and 1 to engine failure. This was a great setback for Air Force. The presence of Stinger missiles in the front area shook them. What was the result? Gunships were totally taken off the roster, and aircraft were required to operate at an altitude of 10,000 meters, that is 30,000 feet above sea level, diving when required, and pulling out well out of reach of man-portable engine missiles. Flying at 10,000 meters at supersonic speed in the high altitude landscape, the whole landscape looks similar. Add to it the restrictive view of pilot from the cockpit. It made the target acquisition and engagement rather difficult. The technique to toss the bomb, the dumb unit, from those heights had a very little chance of hit probability on razor sharp ridge. More often than not, the bombs missed the ridge and fell close to own troops. The ground troops were crying foul. The corps commander had to intervene personally to stop the carnage. On 3rd July, the Air Force modified the Mirages to fire laser-guided bombs. The first 2 LGBs were fired on Tiger Hill. One of them fell on the target, the other missed the ridgeline and veered off to the valley. The LGBs were effectively used to destroy 2 important targets, Montedolo and Point 4833, the logistic base of Pakistan intruders, which was a big setback to Pakistan. With no opposition from Pakistan Air Force, Air Force was free to carry out its attack with impunity. Yet the aerial engagement of fixed-wing platforms using dumb munitions were inconclusive to provide suppressive fire or the close support to the ground troops. I would like to draw a parallel of this Operation Sagar to Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan by the United States. United States in 2001 were able to drive away the Taliban from the plain area, and these Taliban took shelter in the upper reaches of Shakot Valley. The initial drive by US Air Force was done by totally under the cover of their technological superior aircraft and helicopters. They tried the same thing in March 2002 to deal with the Taliban on these heights. Now, in the Shakot Valley, the landscape is akin to Ladakh, with one exception: the general elevation of the dominant height is much lower. The US forces also cleared the Al-Qaeda sheltered in the high reaches of Shakot. They launched the operation, relying heavily on the Air Force. Despite the heavy aerial bombardment, Al-Qaeda could not be tackled. US Air Force lacked the ground-based firepower like the advantage enjoyed by the Indian Army in Kargil. The US Air Force could not provide the requisite suppressive and close support fire for the advancing ground forces. The handheld and shoulder-fired SAMs with Al-Qaeda imposed caution on the flying platforms. So they totally failed to tackle this. Later in the second offensive in Shakot Valley, they carried guns with them, taking a cue from Kargil battles, and they integrated the artillery and were able to flush out the Taliban. Naval action. Indian Navy also prepared to blockade the Pakistan ports, primarily the Karachi port, to cut off supply routes under Operation Talwar. The Indian Navy Western and Eastern Fleets joined in the North Arabian Sea and began aggressive patrols and threatened to cut Pakistan's sea trade. This exploited Pakistan's dependence on sea-based oil and trade flows. Later, the then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif disclosed that Pakistan was left with just 6 days of fuel to sustain a full-scale war. Another aspect that I want to touch on is the technology in high altitude area. Technology that impacts the battle between plains and desert garners limited use in high altitude area. Sometime in the month of June, the Army headquarters sent us a surveillance radar of Israel, which could capture the movement of walking soldiers. The complete logarithms of radar was dependent on the speed of the moving object, which was a minimum speed of 5 to 6 kilometers. This was not the rate that soldier could achieve in the altitude. The trial was not a success. The engagement targeted precision munitions by the Indian Air Force were not sure-shot hits on the ridge lines. In Afghan war, using the Joint Direct Attack munition, a superior munitions were not able to provide suppressive fire under similar conditions as Kargil. Nor were the state-of-art Apache helicopters proved their utility and filled the vacuum of artillery fire. The terrain, weather condition, presence of SAMs in altitude area had changed the equation. Let me sum up this by deliberating on 4 or 5 important points. I would conclude that the performance of our young officers and men was outstanding, fearless and courageous. In each and every assault, they led from the front. Through personal example, we owe the Kargil victory to them. The Pak soldiers are all praises for our young officers. In 1971, I had fought a war in the Diwas sector in Punjab. During the border flag meeting, I heard the Pakistan soldiers telling me, अगर आपके officers और हमारे जवान साथ मिल जाएं, तो दुनिया की कोई ताकत हमें नहीं हरा सकती. I heard the same sentiment voiced in Kargil. It implies that between the 28 years, 71 to 99, the Pakistan army were talking about young officers' capability and their bravery. So it was always a setback in the mind that our young officers would take the lead and set very high example for them to counter. I'm afraid I cannot echo the same for our senior leadership. With a couple of honorable exceptions, there was hardly any generalship involved or display of strategic and operational. The Kargil battles were fought at battalion level using the local tactics and to some extent at brigade level. The Div headquarters was a coordinating logistic medium with minimal operational guidance. The spark of a genius was missing. The Pak had forced the battle on us. We were on a winning spree, and yet we had no political will or the military acumen to culminate into position of advantage. The political compulsion of not crossing the LOC was taken too seriously. What were our plans for end game to conclude the war if we had won is not known. We fell short of the vision or deftness to draw strategic advantage over the opportunity, failing to project ourselves as a strong and assertive military power. The artillery firepower played a pivotal role to turn the table and enable infantry to maneuver to the doorsteps of enemy position. The artillery provided and proved to be only versatile all-weather, 360 degrees, dependable firepower in this terrain. It changed the concept of firepower, fire support to firepower, put fear of God in the enemy camp, and created a perfect synergy between infantry and the artillery. In the thesis on high altitude warfare by Captain P. Marcos of Naval War College, California, US, he writes, Lakhwinder Singh was one of the most innovative officers of the Indian Army. Without Singh's batteries, the Indian infantry stood no chance of taking the heights, as they were very vulnerable to Pakistan forces firing freely down upon them while they made a slow trek up the slope. The infantry soldiers developed immense faith in guns and started taking Bofors to a section weapon. On many occasions, they used them as such. The Indian Air Force ability to bring down suppressive fire is a subject which merits attention. Like the IF in high altitude, even the technologically advanced US Air Force in Afghanistan against the Taliban failed to provide firepower through aerial platform. Induction of these SAMs in the with the Defender had created an asymmetry to Air Force for Air Force to operate in the terrain akin to Kargil. Air power could not be relied upon as a sure provider of the responsive, concentrated fire needed to support ground maneuver. This needs a close examination to ascertain whether the close support role by Air Force is a viable option in high altitude area akin to Kargil. Revolution in technology drives tactical changes, yet certain geographical areas remain unaffected by the full reach of technology. The emergence of precision warfare has yet to dominate combat in high altitude battlefield. Overwhelming fire and concert with bold maneuvers continue to be determined victory on the high altitude battlefield. On northern and eastern borders, our northern and eastern borders are akin to Kargil, with large stretches of disputed areas liable to face the same situation. I am sure the present dispensation is aware of this and will deliberate on this issue seriously. This brings me to the end of my presentation. In the end, I would like to thank the Honorable President Sutya Sethi, Honorable President Major Ranjit Singh, Founder Member Major Jasmeer Singh, and Honorable Secretary Asna Srivastava, and all members of Defence Colony, as also Captain Sethi, for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on Kargil War. Thank you.
So thank you जनरल साहब. एक बड़े शायर ने कहा है, गिरते हैं शह सवार ही मैदान जंग में, वो तिफल क्या गिरेगा जो घुटनों के बल चले. आज इस बात का एहसास हम सबको हो गया थोड़ा बहुत. And Captain Sethi, I request you now to present your vote of thanks to the keynote speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've had an absolutely brilliant officer speak in what I'm, as an ex-service officer, though from the Navy, and I'm glad he mentioned the Navy in the passing. And but the fact of the matter remains that it's rare that we have people who actually speak so bluntly and have brought out very clearly the lacunas that there were. Unfortunately, or maybe I've left the Navy or the armed forces long ago. Hopefully, a lot of those things have been incorporated, corrections have been taken, and I am always the optimist and I am hopeful, and I'm sure General Saab too is. It's not often that you hear somebody speak so candidly, that's the right phrase, so candidly and so honestly. After all, he was there right up front. And we are really grateful for this insight into Kargil. He's brought out many aspects that we were not even aware of. And for that, I think the nation owes a vote of thanks to the legendary enraged bull of Dras. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
I request all of you to stay just for a few more minutes. Ananya and Ananta will lead us to the national anthem, and we can all open our mics and sing along with them. And if you wish, you may like to stand in front of your camera. And with that, we will come to the end of this particular program. Thank you very much. Ananya, Ananta.
If you should all stand up.
जनगणमनाधिनायक जय हे भारत माता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल वंगा हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जल वितरंगा तव शुभ नाम जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाता जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे दाता जय हे
Thank you, General Lakhwinder. Spoke very well.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who has joined today.
Thank you, everybody. It was very, very delightful, and I'm sure we look forward to meeting General Lakhwinder again in person. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very great and very, very instructive.
नौजवान शहीद हो पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो पुकारते हैं ये जमीन आसमां शहीद हो वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो शहीद तेरी मौत ही शहीद तेरी मौत ही तेरे की जिंदगी तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी तेरे लहू से जाग उठेगी इस चमन की जिंदगी खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहाँ शहीद हो खिलेंगे फूल उस जगह पे तू जहाँ शहीद हो वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो गुलाम उठ वतन के दुश्मनों से इंतकाम ले इन अपने दोनों बाजुओं से खंजरों का काम ले चमन के वास्ते चमन के बाहुबा शहीद हो वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very well organized and well done.
Pramila ji, thank you for coming and joining. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was my privilege. It was my privilege. Thank you so much for inviting.
Such beautiful.
It was a lovely session.
Thank you.
Lovely session. Lots to learn. Lots to learn.
Gee. This is the new normal.
Okay, God bless.
Gee, thank you, sir. Thank you. So, अंकल आपका माइक खोलने बंद है, आपका माइक बंद है, माइक्रोफोन बंद है आपका.
You were talking about Jasmeet?
हाँ जी, I think.
Jasmeet?
हाँ जी, हो गया. I just want to congratulate Rachna and Surya for the tremendous amount of work that they have done. Totally your show. Congratulations, Rachna.
Thank you, uncle. It went off very smoothly और हमारा 14th का भी ऐसे ही जाएगा.
God bless you. God bless you.
14th also, everybody can open their mic if they wish to say anything. I think 14th also, uncle, will have a good innings.
And in
yes.
case General Lakhwinder Singh is still listening in, I wish to thank him very much for a tremendously well-spoken talk that he has given us on Kargil. Really, really grateful to him. Thank you very much. Or in case he is not there, Rachna, will you please convey my...
I'll do that. And sir, what I'm going to do is, as soon as this recording is ready, I'm going to put it on YouTube because it's a very big file. So it might take up a lot of space on my computer. And I'll just put it on YouTube the way it is.
I also must thank Captain Raju Sethi for standing in, doing all the introductions, spoke so beautifully well.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Raju. Thank you, SP. Thank you, Surya. Very grateful to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Major Saab. Thank you very, very much, Major Saab.
Thank you for listening in, Primla. We look forward to your again.
Thank you, Jasmeet, from my side also.
I look forward to meeting you all again.
I speak from Noida.
Surinder ji, come on 14th also. We have one more function, Pramila ji.
Yes, of course. I'll keep myself for you.
Yeah.
What will be the function like on 14th?
14th, we are having book discussion of Dr. Sanjay Baru's new book, India's Power Elite. At the same time and the same duration.
Rachna, also you can mention to General Surendra Verma that that Miss Maya Chandani, ex-NDTV, and now assistant professor at the Ashoka University, she is going to be interacting with Dr. Sanjay Baru.
Yeah. So I think in a few days, I think everybody will get full details of the 14th function.
Thank you, Rachna. Let's wind up.
Shall I end the meeting if I have everybody's permission?
Thank you so much.
Welcome. May I end the meeting if I have the permission?
Thank you, Rachna. Let's wind up now.
Okay, so I'm ending the meeting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.